Good day, class. Today I will be discussing the chapter 2, which is Introduction to Transaction Processing. So, what are the objectives of this chapter? The first one is to understand the broad objectives of transaction cycle. So, in order for you to understand the accounting information system, you should know the basic objectives of transaction cycles, which will be discussed later on. And then also, you have to recognize the types of transactions that are being processed by each of these transaction cycles, and also know the basic accounting records used in TPS. Understand the relationship between traditional accounting records and their magnetic equivalence. So when we say magnetic equivalence, ito yung sa computerized system. And then be familiar with documentation techniques. Napakahalaga nito kasi sa isang system, pag sinabi nating documentation, you have to document kung paano ba nagwo-work yung system na yun, paano ba yung process, paano yung sinusunod na ano yung mga documents na kailangan, paano pinaprocess yung mga documents na yon, at kung ano yung magiging end result noon. And then also understand the differences between batch and real-time processing and the impact of these technologies on transaction processing. And the last one is to be familiar with data coding schemes used in AIS. First is we have to know the financial transaction. If you recall, financial transaction is already discussed in chapter 1, but it is just a preview. Here, we are going to discuss it in detail. So what is financial transaction? These are economic events that affects the assets and equities of the firm. So gaya nga ng sabi ko, this event, it may increase or decrease the assets and equities, and also it can be measured in terms of money. And there are also three groups or three types of transaction cycle. The first one is the expenditure cycle, the conversion cycle, and then the revenue cycle. So what is expenditure cycle? So here, incurs expenditure in exchange for resources. So, 'di ba, para magkaroon tayo ng resources, ano ba yung mga resources? These are assets, okay, and then the labor that are being used in production and operation. So, para magkaroon tayo ng resources, we have to incur expenditures. Kailangan magbitaw tayo ng resource din. So, parang you are exchanging one resource for another resource. And then conversion cycle provides value added through its products or services. So, 'di ba, we have acquired resources, and then those resources are then converted into product and services. So, para nga naman magkaroon ng added value yung equity. So, yung entity by earning revenues. And then the revenue cycle, that is receive revenue from outside sources. So that is from conducting services or selling of goods up to the collection of accounts receivable or receipts of money. Okay. So this is the relationship between transaction cycles. So here you can see, 'di ba, in the first option, we have the labor, materials, and physical plant. So we use cash in order to acquire these resources. Kaya under siya ng expenditure cycle, wherein the subsystems are purchasing and accounts payable, cash disbursement, payroll, and fixed asset. Kasi nga, expenditure cycle is all about acquiring resources such as labor and then fixed asset. And then pag nag-acquire ka yan, di ba, maglalabas ka ng pera, or kung hindi naman, magkakaroon ka ng accounts payable. Okay? And then, these labor, materials, and physical plant, when we say physical plant, these are the fixed assets that are being used into production. They are combined and then mapupunta na sila sa conversion cycle. Because here, you are converting those materials together with the labor and with the use of fixed asset like machineries, yes, factory, in order to convert those resources into finished products. Kaya siya nandun sa conversion cycle. So, production na ito. So, nakita nyo, pag na-combine na siya dito, magiging finished goods na siya. And once finished goods na siya, syempre, ano nang gagawin natin? Ibebenta na natin yan. 'Di ba? Bebenta na yung finished goods, kaya dito naman yung sales order, processing, and cash receipts. So, pwedeng mabenta yan on cash or on account. So, kapag on cash, may cash receipts tayo, and then we also have accounts receivable. And then after that, pupunta na siya sa customer. Ngayon, the customer will pay cash. So, nakita nyo yung cash, bumalik siya doon, at papunta ulit siya dito sa expenditure cycle. Because that is, kumbaga parang yan yung cycle niya. So, pag na-convert na natin into cash yung finished goods, it will be then used to, what? To acquire the resources that will then again use to convert the resources into finished goods, and then finished goods will be then sold to its customer. So, nakita ninyo, umikot lang siya. So, that's the relationship between transaction cycles. Okay, next. Each cycle has two primary subsystems. So, di ba tatlo yung cycle natin? We have expenditure cycle, conversion cycle, and revenue cycle. So, each of them, pareho silang may physical component and financial component. So, sa expenditure cycle, ang physical component niyan is the acquisition of goods. Yun nga, yun yung mga fixed asset na in-acquire. And the financial component is the cash disbursements to the supplier. So, when we say, pag dito naman sa conversion cycle, dalawa yan, the production system and the cost accounting system. So, when we say production system, pwede mo rin siyang ma-compare into physical component kasi ito yung process ng pagmamanufacture ng resources into finished goods. Okay, example of that are planning, scheduling, and then the control of the physical product. Pag cost accounting system naman, ito naman yung para ring financial component. Kasi nga, nandito yung flow of cost information related to products. Kasi 'di ba, once you manufacture the product, the next thing to do is to know the cost incurred for each product so that you will know how much mo ibebenta yung product na yon. Kasi syempre, if you don't know the cost, wala kang pagbabasihan. You will not know if kikita ka ba doon sa magiging sale mo. So, mahalaga yung monitoring ng flow of cost. And then the revenue cycle, so we have here the physical component, which is the sales order processing, and then the financial component is the cash receipt. So, pag kasi nagkaroon na ng sales order, the next na process dyan is i-deliver na yung goods sa customer. So, that is a physical component. And then, once delivered to the customer will then pay for the amount of the product. So, siya yung cash receipts, which is the financial component. Okay. The next one is the manual accounting records. You are very much familiar with this. But we have to identify ano ba itong source document, product documents, and turnaround documents. So, itong source document, you're familiar with this because you've encountered this one in your basic accounting. So, 'di ba, sa mababaw na salita, ito yung pinagbabasihan natin ng economic transaction na nire-record natin. So here, in accounting information system, its definition is it is used to capture and formalize transaction data needed for transaction processing. So what are the examples of these source documents? These are sales order and purchase order, 'di ba? For us to record or to trigger the recording of a transaction, dapat may basehan tayo. And ang example nga nito is the sales order. Di ba pag may sales order ka, you will then record sales or and cash or accounts receivable. It depends if the sales is made in cash or on account. That's also the same thing with the purchase orders. Okay. The next one is the product document. So what is the product document? It is the result of transaction processing. So what is the example of that? The example of that is the payroll check of the payroll system. So, kaya nga siya tinawag na product document because um, this document resulted from a transaction processing. For example, yung payroll system. So, nagkaroon na ng initial processing of information, 'di ba? Which is the the salary. Okay, sa payroll system kasi titingnan natin kung how many number of days yung ipinasok ng employee, kung meron ba siyang overtime, kung meron ba siyang absences. And then from that information, it will be processed and then malalaman na kung magkano yung sweldo na matatanggap ng employee for that particular period. And the product document of that is the payroll check. So you cannot generate a payroll check without going first or finishing first the processing that is being done in the payroll system. That's